Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Creative Leadership Podcast, brought to you by Blue Sky Republic. And today it's kind of a special show. We have 4 guests and we're going to talk about the Imposter Syndrome. That's very close to my heart. That's something that I struggle with. I've been struggling with all my life, really, if I think about it. Who are we really inside? And how do people perceive us from the outside, which is different? And that causes tension, I think, because you kind of wonder whether they actually know that you're shit, or you're wondering whether you are shit. And that inner chatter, that inner editor is kind of, it never shuts up, really. And I don't know, it causes a lot of insecurity. But lately, last few years, I discovered that it's probably a superpower if you can kind of play a part and do that really well. At least for me, it makes me very adaptable and agile. And I think about, a role that I'm going to be playing being I've been many things. I've been on stage as a comedian. I've been a musician. I've been an artist. I've been a consultant. I've been, many things. And every time I feel that I'm an imposter. But I imagine that, being someone like that, and then how would they act? And then I try to kind of fit into their shoes or fit into that role. And that's been working out quite well, really. And now thinking about, actually maybe that's not being an imposter, but just, that's just the way it is. Anyway, we're going to discover whether that's true or whether either Afreen, Maarten, Mimp, or Pak feel the same. We have a fantastic conversation for you lined up. Enjoy. I have an amazing group of people gathered here in the podcast. This is the first time, actually, we're going to have a conversation with so many people. And I'm very, very excited. And the topic is really exciting. It's very close to my heart. It's imposter syndrome. And I've been suffering from that most of my life, or struggling with it, or playing with it, or I don't know. But we're going to kind of see what that does, and we can stretch the topic. But I have an amazing bunch of people here, and I would love them to introduce themselves so you can get to know them a little better. So Afreen, can I start with you? Welcome to the podcast, and can you kind of share with the audience a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what you're doing?
Thank you so much, Arne. Hi, everyone. This is Afreen Siddiqui. I'm from Pakistan. So I'm a design strategist and a researcher. Currently, I am doing my master's from Politecnico Milano in design strategy. I have previously I have an experience in visual communication design. I have been teaching in 2 of the universities over here as assistant professor, overlooking design projects. And apart from that, I am the founding member and secretary for International Association of Printing Museums that is founding in Cheongju, Korea. I'm the only woman from the subcontinent and the only woman board member among the 8 from all over the world. That's pretty much it, I guess.
Thank you very much. We're very happy to have you here, and very impressive. And you're getting a small applause from Mimp over there, I can see. But you can't see because it's all podcast. Maarten, please introduce yourself.
Hi there, Arne. Great to be here on the show. So I'm Maarten. I am 53, I think, so I'm getting old. I'm a designer, so I was trained as a designer, graphic designer. I've been working in design, graphic design for many years in communications. At some point, I wanted to know a little bit more what's under the hood of the corporate world. Why are, when we design these nice brands and nice stories, they're a little bit of facade for these companies, but, it doesn't change much on the inside. And I was curious, if we are going to move into more services or more creating experiences for our consumers, then we should really get under the hood of that. So I got more interested in how these things work. So I did a master study, and I got more and more involved in, can I tap into the creative capabilities of people? We're talking about imposter syndrome. People are very afraid to call themselves creative, whereas they started out as kids and they used to play. So, but we somehow layered all those fantasies with and imagination. We layered that with a lot of restrictions, and I want to get those restrictions out, get it away, and really stimulate people to become more creative and to really tap into their imaginative powers to change the world around them. That's really what I hope to do as a consultant, as an advisor, as a facilitator and trainer. So that's
Thank you.
A long intro. Sorry.
Yeah, it's very long. It's very long.
Sorry about that.
But it's okay.
You can bleep that out.
I can edit that out. Consider it cut. So, Pak, I would, it's really good that you're here. Long time no see. You've been on the podcast before, like Maarten, actually, and very happy that you're here. And so, please tell us who are you and what are you all about?
Yeah, sure. Hey, hi everyone. I'd love to see everyone again. I'm Pak. I'm originally from Hong Kong. I now live in Amsterdam, but what do I do? Well, I'm a fashion psychology specialist, and I create and produce content to bring the world of psychology to fashion. I've been running a fashion magazine, fashion psychology magazine ever since, called Hajinski, that brings this world about human behaviors and relationship into fashion. And I also run workshops and teaching for education and brands on the human psychology of clothes. And I've got this lofty mission, which, I mean, really interesting and timely to talk about feeling like an imposter. But my mission is really to think of more viable, engaging ways for people to engage in fashion that doesn't really have to produce more clothes. So this is what I do. This is why I am. I feel like my job takes over 99% of my life. It's worthwhile, but definitely like an imposter. So love people again.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll get back to that in a moment. So Mimp, our final guest on this show, really. So tell us, who are you? What are you all about?
What am I? Oh my gosh, what a question. So I'm Mimp. I have a longer name, but I will save you all time. I'm originally from Thailand, but I've been moving back and forth the UK and Thailand for like many years, and kind of just ended up settling in the UK. I'm a visual designer who is part of change making and social impact organizations, and I started teaching graphic and UI design, helping students become geo front-end developers, and that definitely is a test on imposter syndrome for me. And yes, I don't know what else to say, but yes.
No, thank you. That's great. I'm wonderful to have all of you on this show. And I am not a radio host. I am totally, inadequate in monitoring conversations like this. I've tried it before and I've always failed, but we'll have some fun. And because I have too many opinions and thoughts, I'm specifically about this topic and this topic. So I could fill like hours of me just ranting about this topic, so please stop me if I do. But I would love to kind of frame it a little bit from my point of view, what we're talking about, and please do feel free again to kind of stop me or add anything to it. But imposter syndrome to me means that simply said, it is you feel like a fake. You feel you're faking it. You feel like you're doing something, but somewhere inside your head there's this inner critic, this inner editor that says, no, you don't really know what you're doing. So it's insecurity. It's about, it's insecurity, but it has a different layer. It's insecurity, but you're insecure about something you're actually doing, not about something you want to do, but you're actually doing it. And I was inspired as a kid by Dustin Hoffman, I think it was the one in the interview, who was at that time like one of the most famous actors, and he said something in an interview, and the only thing I remember of the interview is that he said, every time I go on set, I think they're going to find out that I really can't act. They're going to find out. Every time I go on set, they're going to find out you really can't act, which I thought was kind of inspirational, liberating. Specifically because it was an actor, he was already acting. So acting to be an actor that then is acting out something, which is like a double layer somewhere. It's really, really interesting. But I felt like really relieved of that and said, "Oh, me too." So I don't know, how does that resonate with you? And I'm drawn to Pak because you have the psychology as a background. So I'm also hesitating to give you the first kind of, the floor the first as the first person to speak about this. But I'm going to do it. So Pak, okay. As someone with a psychology and fashion, which has so much to do with identity,
absolutely.
Right? So it was like. Okay. What does all this mean to you?
Yeah, interesting you said about Dustin Hoffman, right? Because he's kind of like a hero for many people, and yet he's admitting to this vulnerability. And somehow I kind of wish, if Jeff Bezos can admit to something like this, or people like that. And to me, I was thinking about imposter syndrome a lot, and it is about being vulnerable, being reflective. Those were the first things that be on my mind. Like sometimes I always wish, for me, if I'm less in myself, maybe I can get out of being tied down sometimes of being an imposter. And I feel being an imposter, the barrier is common for everyone, and also within psychology, within diagnosis, is that fear that someone will discover you, that you're a fake. So sometimes we can live with ourselves that we're a fake, but it's that kind of anxiety, that fear of being a fake. And but I think the first point I want to say is imposter syndrome within the world I work in, looking around consultancy or positive psychology training around this, it always comes with the word syndrome. But actually, originally in psychology, in diagnosis, it's not so much of a syndrome as if like a pathology that you need a medication for. Is more like a thinking pattern. No one can get diagnosed simply with imposter syndrome and there's a pill for it. And I just want to free that from the pathological side, from the negative side, and perhaps see it as there's a positive in being an imposter as well. Through fashion, through the way we behave, through reflection, through looking at ourselves in the mirror, and hopefully later on I can introduce the idea of, they kind of shown that people who experience imposter syndrome are also more empathetic, which I think is really interesting. Yeah. But I hope that opens up more topics for people to jump in.
Yeah, and one thing I would kind of think about or talk about is the is where does it come from? So actually really interesting. You said the word syndrome doesn't actually apply. It's not a syndrome. There's no pill for it. You can't say you go to a doctor. Oh, I see what here's what you're like. Maybe it's LSD, by the way. But anyway, so not sure.
It always works.
So maybe there is a pill for it. No, anyway, I'm cutting that out too. And those kids don't do drugs, obviously. So, but my thinking is it kind of, where does that pressure come from? Because it comes from the outside. Because you think other people think something of you that you don't think of you yourself. So there's this really interesting kind of tension that comes from the outside, and that kind of makes you very insecure. Is there maybe something about our culture? Is there something about our surrounding? And Afreen, I really want to kind of ask you also, as a global citizen, knowing sort of several cultures, and is there something there that, where does that come from? Because it does it come just from the inside, or is it also kind of the pressure that you get from culture?
Okay, so first of all, I agree with Park on the point that yes, I think that people who have imposter syndrome, they are a lot empathetic than other people, because I know that that does happen. You have that extra level because you've been continuously judging yourself at many points, and so. And then to your question, Arne, I think there are a lot of factors. Yes, an internal factor as well, because sometimes imposter syndrome, people who have them, they are perfectionists in their own sense. They want something to a certain level, and then again, I think their childhood traumas, how their parents have been with them, how are the other cultural norms around them, they actually play a very, very important role. If I just say that from my own experience, I know that a lot of things that happened in my childhood has created that sort of thing for me, which now, since I have studied, I can say that yes, it is and has been imposter syndrome. Um, because those things that just go unconsciously behind your head, they keeps coming back at you, and you keep kind of do self criticism at times, and then you have that fear that you work extra hard. You work extra hard because you think if you don't work extra hard, whatever you do is not going to be something good. But you need to understand that not every time you have to you have to kill yourself for something. I hope that kind of answer your question.
Yeah. So don't kill yourself every time. Yes. Good point. Good advice. Don't do drugs. Don't do drugs. Don't kill yourself every time.
Could there be kind of a that there's two pathways? So one effect of the imposter syndrome could be where you are stimulated to work very hard to prove that you are actually worth it, and the other direction could be that you get paralyzed, that you don't engage in trying new things because you think, no, I would never be able to do that. So I'm curious, where is that threshold? Where does it move into paralysis, and where does it move into action? Because I think the action is actually maybe not so bad. I mean, it stimulates you to prove something, but if it refrains you from doing something, I think that would be a bigger problem, right? Or
well, yeah. So sorry, Afreen. Go.
No, please go ahead.
No, I was just kind of saying that. So it is very. I think it is also about context. So not just it's culture, it's your background, it's your life. How would who were your parents? How where did you go to school? How was all those factors? So all that context kind of comes in play, but also age. I think also you kind of learn to reflect on yourself after, when you're like in your 30s, you kind of start learning about like, oh, wait a minute, that's actually, why do I behave that way? Or, oh, it comes from my parents. Or so your origin story will kind of, you can start recognizing that you mostly, somewhere when you're a little older than when you were kind of in your 30s, which brings me to Mimp. So as being the youngest here, I think, I'm not really sure. Paxi looks really young too, but I think you're
you all look young to us.
So Maarten,
definitely the baby.
Maarten, you're the old guy. So no, exactly. No, I just want to say, is there a difference between the perspective of someone who is younger than Maarten? Obviously. Is there something to? I mean, I have a teenage daughter, so I see. I've seen her grow up. I've seen the change. I've seen her, and now as a teenager, there's insecurity in her. This is growing, right? And which I feel very bad about and sad about, but it's also something that I can't really do much about, because it's so much about her friends and the school and the culture and everything she sees that should be normal. She wants to, and everybody does this, and except for her, etc., etc. So teenagers. But anyway, I just wanted to have your point of view on this.
Can you?
Or sorry for teasing you about your age.
No, it's okay. Can you re-ask the question again?
Well, the question would be: is there a difference between sort of what you hear now? Like, do you feel that there is an age component to the insecurity that you have from your point of view? Have you seen, growing up and becoming a professional, have you seen there's a change between, being a teenager, being in your 20s, have you seen the difference between feeling insecure and just kind of reflecting on that a bit?
I feel like people, no matter what age they are, they have insecurities in their own ways, in their own definition. So I do think that, like, to answer your question, there is a bit of a difference. So, like, for example, I feel like when I am at my age, I can feel like I can fail forward as much as I want. But when it gets to, like, for example, like, sorry to say this, Maarten and Arne, your ages, it does get to the point of like, oh, I am a lot older, I need to be wise. And there's that, like, I felt like people from your age group, that there is that, like, feeling, like, pressure that, like, I have to do so well because I am, I lived longer. But for my age group, the insecurity does come in from, I just graduated and people want 10 years of experience. And I have to do well, and I have to act like I was born like ready or something to just go into the industry straight from university. And that's something that I've been facing all the time ever since I graduated.
I guess I've got a question for Mimp as well. Like, just going back to what you're saying, Mimp, about the idea of what's out there. And sometimes I think being an imposter is also down to the context, right? And for the young people, sometimes I get to teach the first year, second year university students, so 18 and 19. And my work is not so much about the human psychology of clothes. My work is so much, how do we help young people to become mentally more resilient? And imposter syndrome comes up a lot. And I always wonder, yes, we maybe at the beginning intro we should have disclosed our age, right? So we know where everyone is. But
they can't see us.
my 20s were in the world where, my 20s was in the 2010, so like the noughties era. The world hasn't been through as much shifts as what we've seen during the last few years, and in a way, it was more. Yes, it was more racist, more sexist, etc., that things that hasn't really been spoken about. But there were rules there where somehow you can follow, even if you're a minority group. There's formulas, there's rules where you can make it through that part of life. And then now I think everything is up in the air. Where are the rules? Where are the expectations? And if there's less things to follow, less things to define what perfectionism is or success is in life, would young people feel they're more likely to feel like an imposter? Because what exactly makes a successful human being in that way?
It's really interesting. So I'm connecting this to what they in the US call the Great Resignation. Right, so there's so many people who are quitting their jobs, and there's even on TikTok there's the quit talk. So a meme at the moment, like everyone's quitting their job. A lot of people, young people, which is in a way specifically in the US because of insurance and stuff like that, and dental stuff, and which is way harder than in most countries in Europe. But so you have to have a lot of courage to kind of quit your job and just start something on your own. But this kind of, I think is that, and that's a pandemic kind of thing. It's I don't want to get stuck in this cubicle anymore. I want to do something more meaningful. I want my work to be something that's connected to my personality, who I am, and et cetera, et cetera. So those are so somewhere there's a connection there in a way. That's beyond having this imposter syndrome, because or being very insecure. If you're really insecure, you're too afraid, but to take that step. But when things are up in the air, they become more fluid. It's interesting, actually. Maybe is the pandemic? Is there something there that the pandemic is also changing or helping shift? I don't think it changes being the insecurity people have. but more of like they're more. I don't know. Any thoughts about this?
I think what definitely the pandemic has caused among a lot of young students. I'm teaching many students also in the same age groups as Pak, like you say. And there's a lot of anxiety going on. And actually, there's also some research about this that says that there are a lot of young people who feel lonely, which is really weird because you would think, how can they be lonely? Because they're always connected, always interactive, always on the media, on the tools to interact. But apparently, the conversations they engage in on these tools are not personal conversations. They never address any personal problems. So what they do, apparently, I should go back to the research, what the research was actually about. But apparently, it's about they would much rather go to a professional, seek professional help to talk about personal issues, than talk to friends about their personal issues. So somehow those conversations don't allow these addressing a problem. And that apparently has been increasing during the pandemic. So why that is, maybe because we're more stuck down or we're more locked in our rooms or whatever. But that is really worrisome. And what I can imagine is, and I'm just speculating here, but I can imagine that the more you go into your own narrative or in your own internal narrative, the more dominant that chatterbox that judges and tells you what to do and tells you who you are becomes more dominating. So I think I can imagine that, talk to your friends or talk to people and just, put it all out there and discuss, what's on your mind helps you to tune down the volume of that chatterbox that is judging you and telling you what to do and why you're failing.
But you're also judged way more than when we were kids, long time ago. I can't remember being a kid, but it's like we weren't judged every day with our selfies and the photos that we had to put on, or looking at other people's photos and
exactly.
So we didn't. So we weren't judging ourselves that harshly, I think, and we weren't judged that, and so. Seeing what we talked about in the beginning is this sort of it's empathy. So I do think there's empathy, but it's kind of faulty empathy. You think someone is thinking something about you, but they're only thinking about themselves as well, right? So they're only worried about, so they're not thinking that because they don't see you the way you see yourself anyway. So you don't really know. So empathy would mean, so to your point, it actually would mean that if you create connection together, it will and if you actually would talk to each other about these things, you will be surprised because people will actually think differently about you.
No, because then you can recalibrate, what is actually, it helps to give each other compliments and talk to each other and you need to recalibrate that. But if you don't, then actually that internal narrative becomes so dominating that it becomes a truth in its own.
And there's another...
Afreen. Go.
So I would
we don't accept sorry here. No sorry. There's no sorry. There's just
we're in the Netherlands.
I'm in the Netherlands. Maarten's in the Netherlands. In my culture, it is Arne, shut up.
Yeah.
So just adding on to you guys' point. So I would just say that when we were young, I'm not that old though, but when I was in my 20s or I was in my teens, we don't have that sort of pressures, and especially the pressure of being socially connected in the digital world. And I think that's one of the main problems the current, the younger generation, the boomers and the kids that are in teen right now, because they're exposed to so much of information that they get confused to what to absorb and what not to absorb. And they have so many influences and just like a click of their hand. And that's actually make them more vulnerable right now than us. Because for me, I remember my childhood playing outside on the street and having a good time, just watching TV for maybe 1 or 2 hours. But for them, they have so much amount of information available readily for them, and it makes them, it even makes me sometimes think that I don't know a lot of things, there's so many information out there and I don't know how to grasp all of it.
Yeah.
So and I think that's the problem. What happened with pandemic, that they all could not, maybe at one point they did not know what to communicate because they were stuck in that cubicle. They can't go outside, they can't meet each other. And a lot of kids in their teens and in 20s have those problems because it's actually sometimes it's hard to understand and hear when kids from teen and from 20s, especially in teens, they say that they have suicidal thoughts, or maybe they have some psychological problems, they have anxiety, and you're like, how old are you to have all those things? Life has so
you should have suicidal thoughts when you're in your 40s or 50s.
Maybe yes.
Oh my
God. Another life lesson. It's going really well. This conversation is going really well.
But I think that, if I look at people from 20s right now, I think they are far, far, far aware about themselves, about their surrounding, than maybe us. What we learned in our 30s right now, I think they have learned 10 years back.
Yeah, that might be true. And one anecdote I want to share, which just kind of popped into my head because it's a couple of days ago, which is, I don't know if it's related. It's a stupid comparison, but I have a dog, and we have to we want to go on skiing vacation because that's what we do in the Netherlands. We don't have mountains, so we go to Austria to go skiing. But the dog can't ski. It's a silly animal. We couldn't teach him. He can't ski. So we have to bring him to someone who takes care of the dog for a week, which is sad because we love the dog. It happens. And it's part of the family. So we feel guilty. So he needs to be in loving care. So we brought him to this couple, basically. One, and the man is the guy's a dog trainer, and she actually writes about dogs and stuff like that. So so he's a professional hands. They have another dog and 3 cats. So we went there to see whether the energy between the animals was right. Anyway, this is just to kind of the point I wanted to make is that he told me something that I thought that was really cool. He said the first night they sleep together. And they eat together. They eat together, sleep together on the couch. And that will create connection. And from that moment, everything's fine. And I thought, now hearing you talk about teenagers being lonely, I thought eating together, sitting together, this is in all cultures, right? So coming together, eating together, being together, maybe not always sleeping together, might help. But I snore. So no, that doesn't make any connections. No, but seriously, I mean, we're coming together and eating together, just as a sort of a metaphor almost, is if you don't do that and you just see each other's selfies on Instagram and some videos and stuff like that, if that's the the amount of information that you're getting from the world, but you don't have that closeness or moments of that closeness, I think that you can be very connected and totally lonely. I think so. I was just thinking like, that's interesting. Eating together. He was like, no, it's all about eating together, being together, eating together. If you eat together, if the cat and the dog and the humans, you have sort of eat together, then they're friends. That creates family, it creates connection. I thought that's really powerful. And so I think that's something we're maybe forgetting. It's about these little things that kind of creates kind of your home and also your family and your community and all that. So I don't know if that resonates or if like you're talking about dogs now. Yeah, that was a dog. It was a
Sorry,
dog.
Anna, did you were saying does dog get imposter syndrome? Is this what you mean now?
Well, it's a good question, actually.
You said that.
It's a good question. Does a dog get imposter syndrome? Well, I think a dog gets insecure. So that's for sure. I know. So he will act as if he's really like tough. when he's insecure. I don't know if he then there's like inner chatter saying you're not that tough, but he will bark when he feels nervous and I think there's I'm not going into this dog rabbit hole.
Dog hole.
Let's just say we have like 90% the same DNA or something like that.
No, but
it's not much.
But it is the same when you But if you observe, you can learn things about behavior that you say, hey, this macho behavior he has, it's not that different. He barks. Human, men can bark the same way. Anyway, no. Okay, skip this topic.
I think it's the little interactions, little connections we have during our day that helps us to not feel so much like an imposter. And I think someone mentioned recalibrate. I think Maarten, you mentioned recalibrate earlier on, like throughout your day, and I wonder, like, what do we recalibrate with, right? And then I'm just taking myself, to the world of fashion, to the clothes that we wear, right? During our teenage years, we all went through different phases. Most of us went through different phases. I'll be a punk today, I'll be an emo the next day, and I'll be a princess next month, or something like that. Just play around identities and roles, and we play it with our friends, our family. We're out there in school, we dress in that way, and it's those little bit of eye contact, those little bit of comments that really sticks to you and really makes you go, am I an imposter in this costume, let's say I put on, and does this fit me? If it doesn't, you kind of keep shifting, right? And I wonder what happens. Like, how do you get those social validations when if the things you validate with is something that is seen in that kind of niche perfect, If you're going for the Kim K look, she's the picture you see, and that's continuing like this aspiration that you'll never reach. And what happens, does it actually turn on everyone perfectionism even more because of that? I think that was just
that's cool. I think that's really interesting. I remember. So I used to be, you cannot imagine that, but I used to have this kind of tomahawk and stuff like that. I used to be but I was always, and they called me the clean punker. So I was not really this really dirty. So I was always like, I'm not gonna make it too crazy. So I was always aesthetic punker, something like that. And I always felt very much like an imposter wearing those among the heavy duty punkers, because they were we went to these big houses which were squatted, and there were all these really heavy, very serious philosophers about anarchy and kill the system and stuff like that. It was really, so I felt very much like an imposter, and I was always like I keep a little bit in the background because I don't want to stand out, because what's my opinion about this? Well, I'm not an anarchist, sorry. So, but there's interesting things. So, what happens when you take on that costume, or when you decide to do? And I remember, I remember that I wasn't really sure why I did that. I was not against anything in particular. I was not. Of course, I joined protests, and I joined a little bit on the side. I was just, I was not on the forefront. But the funny thing is, I don't really know why. Maybe I was just against things, or I wanted to, because I was the only one in my, peer group in school. I was the only one who was doing that, which is actually kind of weird, because you would think, that's weird, because then you're alone. But then I identified with people outside that group. So I had another group of friends, but it was not in school. So, but there's interesting things. So what's going on there? Is that really something that is so very conscious? And sometimes I wonder if maybe to your point, Afreen, maybe we were not in our, and I was really far pre-digital. There were no tools. We were not comparing all the, every 2 seconds. So maybe there was less tension on this, but then that is now, because now you can sense that these kids, they are constantly, over aware of who they are and who they're not, and they're not that good looking as the others, and everybody is doing the same thing. There was this interview with a Olympic, because their Olympics are going on, and there was this Olympic champion. She was supposed to win every medal because she was already the best there was, and she suffered from the expectations because she said, leave me alone, because I can never live up to what you all think I can, even though she had won, like, it's a bit the snot story.
Yeah.
She had won all these medals, but she just failed because she said, it's so there's this, you're also sometimes imprisoned not only by your own mind, but also about expectations.
But those are like the real expectations people have of you, which is a real tangible thing. People say, we're expecting we're expecting you to win this one because you're the champion, and so next time you should also be the champion, and we're not, but the imaginary kind of expectations people have are I think they're I mean, it's similar, but it's I think it's different. I think it's and I don't think, and we're talking about teenagers and growing up, obviously, but I think they, in my experience, they don't go away. I still feel like an imposter all the time, but I can kind of switch it around when I say I play a role. Yes. And I like that, and I'm conscious of it, and I just want to play that role really well. If I sort of pretend to be a consultant, I think, what would a consultant do? And I kind of go into that role. I want to be. I've always wanted to be a musician, and I played music for most of my life, still do. But I always thought, like, what would a musician do? I could dream that up. Like, as when I was a kid, I would dream like a musician would do this way, and I would dress that way, and we talk this way, and on stage you do this, and I would kind of act that out. And so as a rehearsal in my head, I rehearsed that role as an actor, really. But now I think that's amazing. That's actually a wonderful way of adapting to circumstances and adapting to maybe what I think are expectations. But it makes me very adaptable, although and the insecurity is an engine of growth. Insecurity is like, I'm always unhappy with what I do, which sounds really bad, but it also means that I'm going to reflect on it and improve it. And so, I don't know, one little anecdote, because I'd love to hear from you, from everyone actually. Where did you feel as an imposter? Where was it? Where can you kind of give me an anecdote of? Was there a moment you felt like, so I'll give you my anecdote. Was when I played in a band very actively. I always switch stuff. So I used to play keyboards. I still do, but then I played bass guitar and stuff. And so I was playing bass guitar in the band, and so sometimes you're with other musicians, and they'll what do you play? And I say, I have bass guitar. And then there was another bass guitar player, and he would then say, typically this is a conversation I would have, he would say, oh, what kind of bass guitar? And then I just couldn't think of the brand anymore. I was like, because I had no clue about the stuff and the things. I didn't know. I wasn't. So you had people who were experts and nerds, so I would say, in something. And I never was. I was like, I didn't know. And I would say something like, the first brand that came into mind, Music Man, say, oh, that's awesome. Which type? And I don't know. And then I thought, why did I just not say, I don't know? Why didn't I just say, I don't know? And I'm in this conversation, I can't get out of it anymore. And oh my God. So it's sort of, I was stuck in these kind of conversations a lot, where I would say, do you know this? And I would say, yeah. And then I didn't. Or did you read this book? Yeah, I read this book. What do you think? Great. What was your biggest takeaway from the book? So that was sort of, I always struggled with, just saying, for a couple of years ago, I kind of switched that. And like I said, I don't know. But it took me such an effort to not be part of that group that knew those things. And I was always stuck in these conversations. So when was the moment is there a moment that you can recognize or remember, like, this is where I really felt like an imposter? That was one of those moments.
Okay, so I'll go. So first, I just want to just continue one thing before I forget. So Martin, what you were talking about, the pressures that these teenagers have. So I'm just thinking it kind of like funny because I think that when we were growing up, we have a lot of people affecting us as like an outside catalyst, our parents, our surroundings, our culture. We never had ourselves judging ourselves because we did not have social media. We were not taking selfies at that point. And these kids have both those things together. So I think they have like a lot of pressure. And we just was, it was an outside pressure. So we weren't judging ourselves at that point. I think that's the difference it makes by the time that we are here. So, and now to our next question. So, a few years back in 2018, I was agitated. I wanted to do something more. And I ended up doing 2 courses related to women leadership. I'm a certified facilitator for women leadership programs. So I designed my own program. I've been doing theater as well. So I designed a 2 hours workshop for women from different ages. And that has a lot of theater, self-reflection, empowerment. And it was more participant driven than me as a facilitator. While doing those workshops, and I did it like quite a lot of time, 4 to 5 times, I was so insecure at many moments because I was leading a group of women who come and who share their problems and their anxieties and their fears. And I provide them with a platform when I say that, you just gonna come, share, laugh, cry, and then you go out and you're relieved. And at the same time, I'm not a trained psychologist, and sometimes it gets overwhelming for me as well because I have my own insecurities. I've stopped doing that now from like last 2 years because I think that unless I address my own insecurities, I'll be able to help other people better. But I don't know if it makes sense, but it's kind of something that I experienced in those times, and I stopped doing it just because of the fact that I thought that I might not be able to justify it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Fantastic. Mimp, any thoughts?
Any thoughts? So because I started teaching recently, graphic design and UI design, and I'm very I teach the people who are like my age range between like 18 to 30. So I'm kind of the same age as them. And sometimes I'm teaching somebody who already knows the subject well, but I have to still teach them. And because the program I'm teaching, it's supposed to train everybody in different subjects to become a front-end developer. So I have that imposter syndrome that comes in from time to time of like, oh my gosh, do I really know what I'm talking about? Even though I do. And I have really good colleagues surrounding me and saying, you do know what you're doing. Your work shows what you're doing. You know how to do this. You explained it very well. Why do you doubt yourself so much? And because of like, I have really good people around me, having to kind of reassure myself, because if it's just me alone, if I don't reach out and express that with my peers, I would just be stuck in the whole I'm not good enough self position the whole time. So yeah, I experienced that recently and I'm still going through it from time to time. It's like, am I really cut out for teaching? Is this like too early? Should I just like not do this anymore? Should I keep going? Because like I really do want to like keep going with teaching, but I don't know if I'm doing it right. I get a lot of self-doubt and a lot of breakdowns and a lot of just a lot of emotional roller coaster going through that recently. So that is my answer.
Keep at it.
Thank you.
Well,
just play that role. I mean,
yeah,
you'll be fine. You know?
Of course, you'll be fine. I know you're fine because I know you, and you're doing an awesome job. But it's also
Thank
that
you.
I don't. So one thing I would say is that the insecurity, don't expect that ever to go away. You turn it into energy, into an engine, you can start, if you reflect on it. So you can have an emotion and just recognize the emotion. I know you're Buddhist, right? So
Yes.
So you must be able to say, hey, you recognize sort of, if you meditate, I'm totally, no, this is not my topic, but I do one thing I do kind of recognize in that kind of, if you, that if you meditate, that you recognize an emotion, but you don't have to judge it.
Yes.
So you don't have to, you just see it as it is. And I think being able to not, so even though you're judging yourself, it's kind of weird, but you just let it happen and you use it as energy, but don't expect it to ever go away, because then it becomes such a struggle, because you're judging yourself that you're judging yourself. And, so don't judge yourself that you judge yourself. That sounds weird, but it's like, that's how it is. It's the inner chatter. You need that because it's energy, and specifically creative people like yourself. I don't know anyone who's creative who doesn't have that self-doubt. The most famous artists will always think what they do is shit, because they need that means that they'll grow and they'll do more. And it's it's not a happy story. You're never going to be happy. It's basically what I'm saying. No, it's the other life lesson. No, of course not. No, that's not what I'm saying. Is that you recognize the fact that it's energy, and it's something you need to grow and to become to become more skillful or to whatever. But I don't know. Me as a person, I think I think I'm reaching the age that I'm thinking this is never going to go away, is it? But I still have that. And people will see me as someone with a voice and with someone who has an opinion and has an expertise. But it's the insecurity which is the engine. It's not my knowing, it's my not knowing is the engine. My not knowing is my superpower. And acknowledging that and seeing my insecurity, that's my superpower. That's where I like to reside, where I like to live, because this is new things and growing things, and like insecurity is actually a wonderful place to be. If you don't judge yourself for being insecure, if you're like, yeah, that's human nature. Everyone is. We all are. Everyone is, So, Pak is, right? I'm seeing you going like...
For sure. Sorry, Mint, you were saying?
No, I was just going to say, like, to add on to Arne's point. Yeah, like, it is reassuring to hear that, it really never goes away. So I do notice, like, within these past few weeks, as well as, like, these past like few months of like preparation in teaching, I realized I have to be a lot kinder to myself and a lot like self-criticizing myself, kind of get to the point where like it's never going to be like perfect. It's going to be good enough, and sometimes it is good enough, and it might not be good enough for me, but it might be good enough for other people, and everybody has their own standards. But I think what is the most important thing is what you think about yourself too. So that is just to add to your point.
That's a cool point. I think it relates to something I once. So for many years, I told myself, or I made myself believe that I was a very bad presenter. So I would go on stage and I somehow I thought I'm not capable of doing this. So it got so worse, but I think it's very much related to, what is the standard that you give yourself? So I wanted to talk like, I don't know, Steve Jobs or whatever. And I thought like, I can never do that. But it ended up being in a situation where I was actually on, because I said, okay, to learn this, I need to do this. So I need to go on stage and do these talks, and I don't do it very often, but sometimes I do this. And of course, at one point, I ended up really getting completely a blackout, completely choked. So I was just, the room went dark. I just didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know what was happening. And it was a really silly situation. And actually, it was and I think there were some things going on. So it was a presentation for a lot of, CEOs or directors or, high level people who were doing in a training. And I was training them something which was very uncomfortable for them as well. So I somehow thought that I had to present myself as a leader as well, or as I had to be this very convincing person. So I made this idea or this construct of what I should be there on that stage. And of course, I could not live up to that. And there was like a hammer, and it would bang, black, everything. And I got stuck, and I didn't know how to get out of it. But then there was another moderator in the room who said, why don't you tell something about what you're doing on this or whatever project? And it helped me to get back a little bit, but it was the weirdest experience to be in this black hole. And the only way to get out of that was, sorry, I got stuck. And what was really good about this guy, he said, why do you think that you're doing a workshop, you want to do an introduction with talking about some, theoretical background? Why are you doing that? They want to learn you want to help them meet their own limits, and you're trying to pretend this thing, and it's not relevant for them because it's not about you. So he really helped me to kind of deconstruct that. And it was a scary thing. So that was my imposter syndrome issue, which really ended up in a very bad spot. But I learned there that actually it's really about that construct that you construct in your head. I had this weird idea of what I should be there on that stage. And I think that is really, to your point, Arne, also, accepting, what is your strength and what is it that you're doing? It should be something that is really related to who you are, not to something that you create that is just not. It's like a Fata Morgana, or it's like a fantasy. It should be something that's really related to you. So I remember that experience.
Yeah, interesting balance though to have that sort of image of something you want to be, and then because basically that's what we're talking about, because you feel like an imposter, but at the same time you can have, you can also have something in mind that is maybe impossible for you to reach.
Yeah.
So it's also about your own expectations of who you are, getting to know yourself. So it is very complicated. It is very difficult. And specifically if you kind of grow up and you have to kind of find your own identity, and you have to kind of, be someone in the world, as, and specifically if you then also go on stage and you're really kind of like, you're very vulnerable and everybody is watching you. So of course it is very difficult, but I think those are learning moments. So there's nothing bad about that. So don't wish that never, you could have said, oh, I wish that never happened, but actually, no, it's an awesome thing that it happened. Maybe at that moment, not, you're like, oh no, I want to die. But that taught you so much. So again, you can judge yourself and then hide yourself forever from the world, but it's actually, these moments are the moments that you grow. These are the moments, that's your failing forward. That's when you become stronger and grow. So not hiding away, not kind of, which obviously takes courage to kind of step forward and say, okay, here I am. But yeah, the only thing is that, which I find a difficult paradox again, is this being insecure, allowing yourself to be insecure. And the other thing is, what I've learned as my trick as a facilitator, so I facilitate a lot of training programs, is, and being a facilitator, I often feel like, and specifically when I'm with a group or that is working on a topic that I have no knowledge of, I have no clue about what they're talking about, so because I'm not the expert in that content. But I've learned that I should just say, because I always thought when there was negative energy, when there was something going on, I thought it was my fault. But even if it was my fault, saying I feel this way. Hey, I feel there's something, is there something going on? I feel the energy is really low, or there's bad energy. Am I the only one? And then what I've learned is that then everybody feels that. And you're like, oh yeah, we feel that too. Oh, I thought it was me. And I thought, oh, it was me. Oh, it's you. Okay. And then you talk about it. So, the cliche of the elephant in the room, right? So nobody's talking about it. But if you are able to recognize your insecurities, and you're able to share them, you are on your way to become a great leader, because everyone's insecure. But by sharing your insecurities, people will go like, oh, that's so nice, because And that's the weirdest. So the weirdest thing I've always experienced, that when I would say I don't know what I'm talking about, people will go, "That's so awesome! You must be a real expert." And I just said, I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, but being so open and vulnerable, you must be really strong. No, I said I'm insecure and I'm nervous. And they're like, yeah, that's great, awesome. And I'm like, okay, fine. That was the thing I learned. It's like, oh, wait a minute. You are too. And I say it now. And you're like, that's great. I wish I could say that, because I feel the same. And like, that's a neat trick I just discovered. Anyway, so Pak, I know I see you nodding. You had enough time to kind of think about one of your, blackest moments.
Oh God! I have to say, my mind's just drifting all. I think the last few minutes has made me think of a lot of things. That it feels like it takes bravery to admit to this insecurity, especially when you're teaching. We're in a room when you've got clients. Someone's paying you to be there to give this expert knowledge, and sometimes you're like, "Is my knowledge even worthwhile, guys? I don't even know." But you don't say it, right? Because you got paid and you've already said that's what you're going to do, right? But I just wonder, can you create a safety in the environment that you work in first before being vulnerable, before acknowledging, and what does that look like? And also, this is not to, I think, to Mimp and Maarten's point about you get lost in this flurry of feelings and emotions associated with being an imposter that is very overwhelming. But it reminds me, I've got a repeated teaching that started since I'm in Amsterdam. So since I started in Amsterdam 4 years ago, and the same topic, same workshop, they want the same slides even. And at the beginning, I did feel very much do I know what I'm talking about? I feel such an imposter. And now I picked up the work again and go, yeah, I can do it again. And I don't feel like an imposter anymore because I know exactly what I'm going to say word by word. But that actually takes confidence away from me. I'm actually thinking, I feel like there's more area to mess up because I'm not. Everything just feels so secure. It makes me feel not secure. Does that make sense? It's so weird.
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah,
it totally makes sense.
Cool. Fantastic.
Yeah, so it just makes me feel like maybe a bit of vulnerability also helps me to at least put an effort in or to engage. But going back to the first moment I realized I'm an imposter was the first time I went into a fancy diner where in front of you, usually you get 1 fork and 1 knife and 1 spoon. No, you get 3 forks, 3 knives, 3 spoons of different shapes. and you have no clue what you're doing. But you pretend, don't you? You haven't asked the waiters to go, can you show me which fork I use first and stuff? And that's when you're asking that question, that reminds me of being an imposter about something, putting yourself in a template. And sometimes the template is unspoken, sometimes it's spoken. But maybe it's okay to talk about it. Maybe it's okay to question it. Maybe it's okay to go, excuse me, do you have chopsticks? I don't know.
Well,